Adlai E. Stevenson.
These charges are totally false, and I deny them categorically. The United States has committed no aggression against Cuba, and no offensive has been launched from Florida or from any other part of the United States.
I had been stationed in Cuba on two occasions, in 1955 and 1956. Then I returned in 1959, 58. I was there 59 and 60 before I had to leave rather abruptly. I had an affinity for Cuba. The Cuban people are marvelous. I'd seen what was going on there. And many of the participants in the Bay of Pigs were on that landing force because I had known them personally in Cuba. And I had recommended on a number of occasions that such and such a person would be a good man to have in the brigade. So when that broadcast came from the beach and the leader said, "We're standing in the water and there's nothing else we can do," and he cursed us. I felt he was cursing me too.
Tragic epilogue to a gallant venture. Outside the Miami headquarters of the Cuban Revolutionary Front, exiled wives and mothers seek word of the men who participated in the ill-starred liberation invasion. For most, no news is bitter news, especially as in Havana, Fidel Castro, in a 4-hour television harangue, shouts death for all 700 captives he claims taken in the abortive landing. Miles away in the serenity of Camp David, President Kennedy and former President Eisenhower confer on the repercussions of the Cuban episode. General Eisenhower promises bipartisan support for the president in this crisis as the president moves to the next round of the unceasing East-West power struggle over Cuba.
I've said as much as I feel can be usefully said by me in regard to the events of the past few days. Further statements, detailed discussions are not to conceal responsibility because I'm the responsible officer of the government, but merely because and that is quite obvious, but merely because I do not believe that such a discussion would benefit us during the present difficult situation.
The Secretary gave us a crisp, clinical analysis of the death of the Cuban venture. But of course, no post-mortem can revive a corpse.
When the Bay of Pigs failed, I was sitting in the building on that night that everyone knew it was a failure, and Robert Kennedy came in his shirt sleeves, and he had been sent there by his brother to clean that place out. He wanted to find out what had gone wrong and do something about it. The result, however, was that Bobby Kennedy fell in love with the concept of clandestine operations. And we now know there's one question that's not been answered. Did President Kennedy and did Bobby Kennedy know that there were assassination plans against Fidel Castro? It's an unanswered question. The one thing that I'm absolutely sure of is that not only they knew, but they wished for the continuance of that long period after the Bay of Pigs, in which there were many actions taken against Cuba. To put it precisely, there was at one point when Bobby Kennedy said, "When are you fellows going to get off your bottoms and do something about Fidel Castro?"
There were found some a suit, a wetsuit, a clamshell, various things that were on the shelf in the agency that were regarded as things that might be used in possibly killing Castro or being used against him, which never came off the shelf or never used. If that's a plot to have created this, then I will back up and say that then we ought to enumerate every single item that conceivably had to do with the invasions of Cuba, which we were constantly running. Under the government aegis, we had task forces that were striking at Cuba constantly. We were attempting to blow up power plants. We were attempting to ruin sugar mills. We were attempting to do all kinds of things during this period. This was a matter of American government policy. This was